Welcome. I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. The opening words there of our psalm for today, which is Psalm 122. My name is Keith Simons. I'm a Bible teacher from England, and I present these talks on how to understand the King James Bible using the Psalms, looking at each psalm verse by verse and word by word. So please turn with me to Psalm 122. And there you'll find the heading, A Song of Degrees of David. The words of David probably show us that David wrote this psalm. A Song of Degrees. This is a title that's usually understood to mean that it was for pilgrims to sing as people went to the great feasts of the Lord at the temple, God's house in Jerusalem. They would sing these songs. Degrees means steps upwards. Another translation is ascents. And Jerusalem is situated on a hill, and so people are climbing upwards in order to get to Jerusalem. That title could have other meanings, and many other meanings have been suggested for the title of Song of Degrees. But it's perhaps this psalm, above all others, that paints a picture of this group of 15 psalms with this title, that paints a picture of it being for those who were going to the feasts at Jerusalem, because it begins in verse 1 with the statement, I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. I was glad. Why was he glad? Well, maybe he was glad because he was going to the feasts of God, the Passover or Pentecost or the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem. And he was glad to hear that there were others in his town who wanted to go also, who shared his religion and his beliefs, who thought that it would be a wonderful thing to go to the house of God, God's temple in Jerusalem. Or maybe he was glad that he would have companions on his journey, that he wouldn't have to travel alone, and that as he approached Jerusalem, he would be able to sing these songs, the songs of degree, with people from his own town who joined him on this journey. Travel in ancient Israel was difficult and dangerous, especially for the person who had to travel alone. He was glad to have companions? No, I think the reason he was glad was he was glad that he was going to go to the house of the Lord. His gladness was that he would be able to pray before God at his temple, his holy place, God's holy place in Jerusalem. And that filled David, the author of this psalm, with joy to think of being there in the house of God, worshipping God with the people. The worshippers at the temple didn't go into the temple building that was only for a few priests to go in each day. And they didn't, of course, go into the Holy of Holies, the most holy place, which a high priest would enter once a year and not without blood. They would stand in the outer courtyard, the courtyard that surrounded the house of God, and there they would go to pray and to worship God and to join with the whole of Israel, with people from every tribe, every group of people in Israel would come together to worship God in that great courtyard which surrounded God's house, the temple. And so with that wonderful thought that he was going there to Jerusalem to pray, he continues in verse 2, Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Do you see what's happening here? O Jerusalem, he's talking to Jerusalem as if Jerusalem is a person. And he's saying, We're going to go there. We're going to actually stand in that holy place. We're going to enter into the gates of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, like all the cities and towns in Israel at that time, was built with high walls that surrounded it. It needed those high walls. There were a lot of robbers in the countryside. Enemy armies frequently attacked. And so walls, strong walls, surrounded Jerusalem. And the only way into Jerusalem was through the city's gates, of which there were several for such a big city and important city as Jerusalem. Our feet shall stand within thy gates means we're going to go into the city, Jerusalem, this city that God has chosen out of all the places in Israel, the one place in earth that God has appointed for sacrifices to be offered to him. O Jerusalem. And just as the King James Bible repeats Jerusalem, so does the Hebrew language. Let me read to you verses 2 and 3 together to give you the feel of that repetition of Jerusalem. Our feet shall stand within thy gates. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together. Do you see the way he repeats Jerusalem as if he's treasuring the word in his mouth, the very name of it, which means probably a vision of peace. He repeats over and over in joy at the thought of how wonderful it will be to be at the place of God's house at Jerusalem. Verse 3 says, Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together. Compact together. That could mean the houses are close together, and they were in ancient Jerusalem. The houses were packed in as tightly as houses could be packed, and the city spilled out. It spilled out beyond its original city walls and had to be extended time after time so that the houses were safely within the walls. It was a city that is compact together. It wasn't an easy city to enlarge because it was built originally on a hill and it had to move onto the adjoining hill. Now, the actual name Jerusalem, a vision of peace, in the Hebrew language is what is called a jewel. It's the kind of word that describes two of something, not just one. So Jerusalem is being described by its name as being a sort of twin city. And the way that Jerusalem developed on two hills makes it look very much on the map like a twin city with a deep valley between the two halves of ancient Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together. That word compact could mean joined. Jerusalem, these two parts of the city, builded as a city that is joined together. Oh, and it's not just Jerusalem as a physical city that is joined together. This is the place of the joining together of all God's people. This is the place where all of Israel's people gather at the sacred feasts of the Lord to worship God in Jerusalem. Verse 4, whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. The tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord. Do you hear that repetition again? Tribes, tribes. The tribe meant the groups of families that there were in Israel. Jacob famously had 12 sons, and the family of each son grew so large that it became a tribe in its own right, a group of families. David and later Jesus belonged to the tribe of Judah. Judah was one of Jacob's 12 sons. Or we could talk about the Apostle Paul. He belonged to the tribe of another son, Benjamin. And so it was for all of Israel's people. In ancient times they knew which tribe they belonged to, if only because the tribes lived in different parts of Israel. Moses assigned for them, at God's direction, a different place in Israel, which each of them would have as their own land. From the far north, where the tribe of Dan eventually settled, right down to Judah in the south, the tribes would gather in Jerusalem. That central place, they gathered there because this was a place of the temple. This was a place that God had appointed to be the place of sacrifice for all of Israel. Israel's people were not to offer animals to God on the hills wherever they lived. No, they were to take those animals to Jerusalem to offer them as sacrifices. Whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord. Israel's people gathered together in Jerusalem. Why are they gathered into Jerusalem? Because they're going to go to the testimony of Israel. Testimony means witness. God had a covenant. He has a covenant with Israel, a relationship based on his promises. And it was the duty of Israel's people to keep that covenant, to follow God's instructions, to obey his laws. And there was a witness to that covenant. There was a witness of the 10 Commandments on tablets of stone, which were kept within the sacred box, the Ark of the Covenant, which is itself called a testimony. And that was in the Holy of Holies, the most holy place of the temple. When God's people gathered unto the testimony of Israel, they were gathering at that sacred place. They were gathering around the temple to see this witness that God had given to them of his relationship with their nation. Okay, 3,000 years have gone by since David wrote these Psalms. And if you go to Jerusalem in Israel today, the temple has not been standing there for almost 2,000 years. But there is a site in the centre of the old city of Jerusalem called Temple Mount. It's now occupied by the people of a different religion, yet it is still a testimony, a witness to God's relationship with Israel, God's promises, God's covenant to them. And Israel's people gather at a wall that remains from ancient times, a supporting wall of the original temple complex. That is called the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall, and there devout Jewish people still pray, and some of them will go up onto Temple Mount. They're not allowed to take up prayer books or Bibles or to pray there, but they go there because this is a witness of God's covenant, his relationship with Israel. And this witness has stood there giving testimony, giving evidence to the relationship God has established with Israel's people for 3,000 years. Unto the testimony of Israel, the tribes gather to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. They're going to declare the name of the Lord to be their God. They want to give thanks to God for everything that has happened in Israel, for everything that God has done there, for every way that God has blessed them and provided for them and looked after them. They're going to give thanks unto the name of the Lord, in the place that bears his name, the temple of the Lord, before the testimony of Israel, the witness to Israel of God's promises to them. On to verse 5. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. The author of the psalm doesn't just think of the past of Jerusalem or the present in his day. He thinks of the future. He thinks of Messiah's rule. Yes, David did establish thrones, royal seats of judgment. In other words, places where judges would sit to make judgments. And those royal seats, because they were the thrones of the house of David. Ancient kings were also the chief judges of their people. And so David and his sons acted as judges, yes, in the past. But this is looking forward to the house of David. For the house of David, the Messiah who comes from the family of David, and to the right and good judgments that he will establish when he will set Israel's people free from those who've oppressed and those who've acted cruelly, and from their suffering. There are set thrones of judgment. There are placed thrones of judgment. God is the judge of all people. He's the judge of Israel's people. And one of the purposes of the Messiah, one of the things that Messiah will do when he comes to rule, is to act as judge. I've just turned to Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 4, which describes Messiah's rule. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. It's describing the Messiah, Christ, as the judge who sets the world right, the judge who can deal with oppressors, who can deal with evil people, who can put the world at peace. And peace is going to be the subject of the final verses, the last group of verses in this psalm. Once more, the author of the psalm plays with words to emphasize his message, and our King James authors, translators have helped us by just suggesting the way the Hebrew plays with words. Listen to the repetition of the letter P in verse 6. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Pray, peace, prosper. Okay, that's repeated with even more emphasis in the Hebrew, because the sound in the Hebrew is the sound of the end part of Jerusalem, the bit that means peace. Pray, peace, Jerusalem, prosper. They're all very similar words in the Hebrew language. And there is a word that doesn't appear here, which is suggested by them, which is Solomon. Jerusalem, Solomon, Salem, Solomon. And, David is praying for the peace of Jerusalem under Solomon's peaceful rule. But he's seeing beyond that to the rule of his house, his family after him, Messiah from his house, Messiah who will bring perfect peace to Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray that God will bring peace and comfort to Jerusalem's people, that he will bring success to Jerusalem's people. They shall prosper that love thee. God wants his people to love Jerusalem, to care about Jerusalem, and their care about Jerusalem is expressed in their prayers for the peace of Jerusalem. They love Jerusalem, they pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And in verse 7, we've got their prayer. The prayer that he's asking them to pray in verse 6, peace be within thy walls and prosperity within thy palaces. It's still addressed to Jerusalem. It's saying, God, may peace be within Jerusalem's walls and prosperity within Jerusalem's palaces. Prosperity means quietness and ease. It's a prayer for that sort of peace. The palaces are the fortresses of Jerusalem. The word palace is probably not a very clear translation of that. It's describing the elevated places where, of course, people built palaces. but they built fortresses, strong places for the army. And really, in David's day, there wasn't much difference between the two, because a palace had to be a strong place that was safe. And so it could say prosperity within thy fortresses, but then you wouldn't have the feel of them being royal palaces. And so the prayer is that God will bring peace and prosperity, quietness and ease to Jerusalem, that its walls will protect the city, that its palaces will not be places that have to defend the city from fights, but will be peaceful, quiet places. And verse 8, the author says, for my brethren and companions' sakes, I will now say, peace be within thee. I desire it for the sake of everyone in Israel, for all the people in Israel. They need peace, whether in the north or in the south, whether they're far from Jerusalem or near to Jerusalem. It matters to them that Jerusalem, this vision of peace, this city of peace, should really have peace. Peace in the sense of success and ease and comfort and quietness, but peace above all in the sense of a right relationship with God, living in accordance with his covenant, seeing God fulfill his promises to Israel, seeing God fulfill his promises to Jerusalem. Verse 9, because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek thy good. That is, he will seek the good of Jerusalem. That word for seek means, in simplicity, to search it out by prayer. It's saying, because of the house of the Lord our God, I will pray for Jerusalem's prosperity. But it implies, the word, that I'll strive after it, that I'll work for it. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will work for good things to happen in Jerusalem. I'll put my effort into it. Why do I do this? Because of the house of the Lord our God. Because I remember that God lives among his people in Jerusalem. That God has established the one place on earth that he's chosen as his home is Jerusalem. I will remember how God has chosen for Jerusalem, and then I will pray, I will desire, I will work for, I will strive after the good of Jerusalem. And David could pray that so long ago because he, like us, looked forward to the day when Messiah will establish his throne, his royal seat of judgment in Jerusalem, when he will rule as King of Israel and King of the world and bring the world from its current state of turmoil and strife and trouble to a place of peace, perfect peace. Turning back to Isaiah 11 and verse 7. And the cow and the bear shall feed, and their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice den. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And I think I only need make one comment on that passage, which is my holy mountain, of course, is the mountain where the temple stood, God's holy place in Jerusalem. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. In a moment I shall read to you the whole of Psalm 122, but first my email address, 333kjv@gmail.com. And I'm hoping that you'll write to me this time and tell me where in the world you are and you're listening to this podcast. So write to me, Keith, and my email address is 333kjv@gmail.com. And now here is a whole of Psalm 122. A Song of Degrees of David. I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together, whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Peace be within thy walls, and prosperity within thy palaces. For my brethren and companions' sakes, I will now say, Peace be within thee. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek thy good.